Hello, I'm Ro Randall. I'm a psychotherapist and I've been working on climate issues for more than 15 years now. This is one of a series of short videos about how we cope with the climate crisis emotionally. And in this one I want to talk about the idea of the transformational climate journey. The climate journey is an idea that comes from a piece of research which Paul Hoggett and I did. Paul Hoggett's from the University of West of England. We did this a few years ago. We talked to a number of climate activists about what it was like to be really up close to climate change. And I think this is a useful idea because I think it brings us very close to one of the most important things about coping with the climate crisis, and that is about the relationships which you make with other people as you try to work through this. So there were a number of waypoints on this climate journey, but the one at the end is where I want to actually start with. And this is what one of the people said about the phase which we came to call resolution. I've found my own path of how I live my life with those kinds of things going through it. I'm doing whatever I can to help avoid a bad outcome. So I'm doing what I can, and there's nothing else really that I can do. So this person had arrived at a quiet place that was also a place of action. And the waypoints on this journey were these. There was the point we came to call epiphany, which was the moment which a lot of you will recognise, where suddenly you've allowed this thing into your heart and it's just shocked you. This was followed very rapidly by a phase which we called immersion, where climate change became pretty much the only thing the person was thinking about. They were absolutely absorbed in the facts. They were spending all their time online looking up information about it, and they were going through the most difficult and painful emotions, which I've talked about in the previous videos. But all of these young people moved very rapidly from this stage into the stage we called action. Often they were propelled there by anger, and I think it's much more common for young people to feel angry than for older people to feel angry about this issue. And it also has that kind of propulsive force that makes you want to get involved in things. And they formed themselves very rapidly, or they found themselves, the communities of others who they were going to do things with. And these communities of people were sophisticated emotionally. They had a kind of emotional sophistication which was very interesting to us as researchers in the ways in which they were able to support each other and talk about and think about what was going on. And this is one of the most important things, I think, about taking action about climate change, is to place yourself amongst other people who you're going to do this with and who you can get support from. One of the things about this phase that was problematic, however, was that all of these young people were moving from a place of huge distress about climate change very rapidly into this point of action before they'd really had time to work through and understand all of what was happening to them. And although being engaged in action did, as several of them very eloquently say, help with the panic and the distress which they felt, because it gave them back a bit of control, it gave them back a sense of being effective and of doing something. It was also characterised by a sense of desperation, the sense that you couldn't leave this thing alone, and many of them came to a point of burnout where they collapsed and they were unable to really continue with what they were doing. And sometimes this was quite serious. They'd sometimes been through quite traumatic experiences in engagements with the police and so on as well. So those things were also playing a part. But they reached this point of burnout, and it was out of that crisis and burnout that they reached this final stage, which we came to speak of as resolution. And for most of these people, the way through this crisis was again through the support of the people who they were working with, the people who were also part of the activist community. But where they got to was this place where, as the person I quoted at the beginning said, climate change was really running through life like the writing in a stick of rock. It had become the defining part of their life, but it was no longer the part which dominated and which excluded other things. And so we found that in this phase of their journey, They were very good at self-care, they were very good at looking after each other, they were very good at measuring out their engagement with the really frightening bits of news and measuring out their engagement with action and what they did. And they were, by that point, in a place where their reasons for doing this were no longer, we've got to stop this, we've got to stop this, but we're doing this because it's the right thing to do, because once you know about this, this is actually the only way to live. So I think there are some interesting things that we can perhaps all take from the experiences of those young people, of how they came to terms with the very difficult issues around the climate crisis.